This episode of the Run Iowa podcast is brought to you by RunIowa.org. That's right. You can advertise with us as well just by contacting me, robruniowa@gmail.com, or through any of our social media outlets. If you have questions, we have answers. That's right. Get a hold of us. This is episode 104 of the Run Iowa podcast. All right, welcome back to the podcast, and it's episode 104. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Awesome. We're fighting through colds and schedules and everything else right now. So we are a little late. This is, I think, 3 weeks since our last podcast. Right. Normally we do every other, or at least we have been lately.
Right. So, golf was in the way.
Yeah, golf was in the way for
doing weekly ones.
Right. So hopefully we can get back on some sort of schedule.
Right. No doubt.
If nothing else, just for our own sanity.
Yes.
Because I don't know about you. I like doing this.
So do I.
And like the scheduling and...
It's a good break from all the other mental grind that we go through.
Yeah, more mental grind
to
get through this. So what's up? What's new with you? We're going to talk about your run in a little bit, so we're not going to do that quite yet. But other than that, did your daughter end up running with you?
No, she did not. She did not.
Okay, so we'll talk about that in a little bit.
That's a whole other story.
There's our tease,
yep.
So maybe we'll talk about that later. I do want to talk a little bit about shoe selection right now.
Alrighty.
There's a lot of different shoes out there.
Yes.
People know that. We've talked about them. We've done reviews, that kind of stuff, previews, that sort of thing. But we were talking about your run in Chicago, and you just mentioned that you had to pick a different pair right before you decided to run.
Yes.
And you've trained very little in them, correct?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about the shoe you went with, the shoe you were going to go with, and why you made that decision.
Well, I originally thought I was going to wear a pair of New Balances that we previewed, and I had run in them most of all my training. I try to, and if people don't remember, I rotate through my shoes quite often. I usually don't wear the same pair 2 training runs in a row. I have 2 or 3 pairs that I like to wear, and I switch them around just so I'm not running in the same shoe. But I had a pair of New Balance that I was kind of zeroed in that I was going to wear. They felt good. I really enjoy wearing them. They feel comfortable. But on a training run that I had, a 13 to 15 miler, it was just a terrible run. My feet hurt so bad. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to run in these.
Sure.
And so
now, I'm going to interrupt if you don't mind. I know one thing that sometimes matters with shoe comfort is how tight you tie the shoes.
Right.
And was that a factor?
I don't know.
Especially if it's a one-time thing, maybe that was it. Maybe you just raced them up.
And it was really warm that day, so it was just bad conditions for a long run. You know, it was 89 degrees. I was running at the end of the school day. I got a ride to school, so I ran home.
Yep.
And it's about 15 miles home. I got 13 miles of it done, stopped at a friend and got a ride home.
Right.
Oh, but my feet hurt so bad. So I'm like, God, I got to kind of make a plan for a different pair of shoes. So then I did some training runs, and I have a pair of Sauconys that I really like. I think they're the Guide 9. I think that's the ones. And I like that, and I wore them to school. I'll wear them to school and see how my feet feel in them all day.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, these are nice. And they're way higher profile, more cushioning. I'm like, okay, I'm going to wear these. So then I did a 20-mile or 19.5-mile training run, and it was raining, so I changed shoes. I started off with the New Balances that I wanted to wear. I changed to a different pair of New Balances that I have that are really similar.
During the run?
During the run.
Okay.
Because I was wet. It was raining.
Yep.
And then I was going to change one more time to these Sauconys, but I didn't because I got out further from home, and I just said, all right, I'm out here. I'll just finish up and do a 10-mile back to the house. I went out 5 and back. Anyway, so then we did Market to Market 2 weeks ago. And so I wore the Sauconys that were going to run on a long run, and they felt great.
Sure.
So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go with those. I wore them 3 days at school just to make sure that I'm not getting any hot spots or blisters walking around in the building. And I wore them, and they're a little heavier than my others. And not that was a reason for anything, but I noticed that.
Sure.
And my feet didn't hurt like when I was wearing my New Balances, but I got to about mile 13, and on my left foot, I'm like, I'm going to lose toenails. I can just feel them. And I didn't, but it had that feeling. So there's the shoe thing. I don't know if it affected my run at all, but definitely gave me, when you're out there and you're struggling, everything that you do different creeps into your mind. Oh man, I shouldn't wear these shoes. Oh, did I not hydrate enough? All those things, it just tears you up.
Well, and so there's a good foreshadowing for your run on Chicago. But, with shoe selection, there are some basic differences in shoes.
Right.
Obviously, a lighter shoe is typically worn for concrete racing,
right,
whereas a trail shoe probably has a little bit more sole and
they're
cushioning.
stiffer.
It's a little stiffer. That way, if you're stepping on rocks and stuff,
Right.
it's not hurting as much. And branches and things like
Right.
that. So the way the shoe fit you, though, was pretty much the same between the different shoes? Yeah, because, I would assume, you
Right.
said, you like to switch out your
Right.
shoes.
Yep.
So the actual structure of the...
Right, they feel... They're different. They're noticeably different. The New Balance are way lighter material.
Yeah.
But the foot box is similar.
Right.
Other than being a little more drop to them, the Sauconys have a little more drop because they're a little more heel cushioning.
Sure.
But everything not enough that I would be afraid to wear them. And I've worn them before on longer runs.
Sure.
I think I wore them actually on my last half marathon. I wore that pair of shoes when I ran my last half.
Okay.
So it wasn't like I haven't put miles in them.
So we have a bunch of people on the podcast that are shoe experts and
Right.
things like that, and we don't claim to be shoe experts, but
And they probably say I was stupid.
so but just a couple things to think about is the tightness of the lacing, and because that affects. I remember my wife had that issue. She lost 2.5.
Right. Yeah, it changes how the shoe is.
Right.
If you're not
if
doing
it slides
the same,
or that kind of stuff.
And but I don't think any of those were issues.
Sure. With the choices of shoes that we can make, there are plenty of guides out there.
Right.
Whether it's Runner's World, the shoe store, online rating systems, that sort of stuff. We used one about a year or so ago. You used for rating them. What do you think would be? Well, okay, so experience is going to be the ultimate factor, right? Once you wear it enough, you should know how it feels.
Right.
But if you are just going into getting a couple pairs of shoes, Dave, what do you think people should look for if they're going to look for different styles of shoes? Right. Or, when they're talking about one shoe works and one doesn't, what do you do with the shoe that doesn't?
Yeah, they're daily wearers.
There you go. Okay.
I would first of all, like we've said, and not that we do what we say, but I go in someplace and I go into a real running store and have them fit you for a pair of shoes.
Sure, yeah.
And ask for some advice in what I'm getting in these shoes, and be prepared to have to try a pair or two of shoes.
Yeah, and I would say be open to different brands or whatever too.
Don't be locked on at anything and say, here, I want to try these out, and pay attention to the simple things is what the weight is. Because you figure if you take like my step counter said, running a marathon, that day it was 59,000 steps.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a shoe that's 5 ounces heavier than what you're used to, over 59,000 steps, that adds up to a lot of additional weight.
Sure, yeah.
But be prepared to do that. And then the good thing is if you go to a real running store, none of the box stores, but a real running store, if you try a pair of shoes that they recommend and you get fitted for, and you wear them a couple times and don't like them, my experience is 90% of them will say, bring your shoes back in, we'll exchange them out and get you something that you're comfortable in. They don't want you stuck with a pair of shoes that you hate.
Right.
It doesn't do them any good because you'll never go back.
Right, yeah.
And be ready to maybe have to try a pair of shoes. And
I would even say there are some brands, and I don't want to call them out because I'm not 100% sure, but it's the same kind of deal. If you try them for so long and they're just not working for you, you can return them right back to their website or wherever you might have purchased them. And I think you had experience with that.
With my
your Brooks, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I said I wasn't going to call them out, and then I called them out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so some places will let you do that exchange as well and see. So just think about that for different types of shoes that you're thinking about. If you're a new runner, we've talked about this probably 100 times. If you're a new runner, go with whatever feels comfortable right away. Doesn't matter structure, doesn't matter weight necessarily. Don't try to get yourself the Nike Elite Ghost fabricated whatevers, and they cost $900. on if you're just starting out with 5Ks or whatever, just started walking.
That feel comfortable.
Something comfortable, yeah. We talked about my first pair was literally a tennis shoe that I just had, and then I changed them into my running pair.
Yeah, ran. There was a guy Sunday that he had a pair of what I would call Grandpa New Balance walking shoes, and he was an
dad
older
shoes,
guy. Dad shoes, and that's what he was wearing. And they probably weigh 2.5 pounds a piece, but that's what he was. Shoes he wore.
There you go. Hey, that's right. So that's kind of just real quick about structure. And if you're a new runner, if you're an experienced runner, you probably have plenty of experiences getting shoes and advice. If you want to share any of that, just do so on our social media outlets at RunIowa or on our website, runiowa.org.
Awesome.
Cool. We'll take a break. We'll come back, and Dave's going to recap his Chicago Marathon run, what went right, what went wrong, and everything in the middle. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll be back right after this, episode 104 of the RunIowa podcast. Just a reminder, if you want to advertise in this space right here, just go to runiowa.org or email me, robruniowa@gmail.com. We can get you set up with some advertising opportunities right here on our podcast to get the audience that you need for your running gear or anything else you might have. So stick with us. We'll be right back with Dave on the RunIowa podcast. All right, so Dave, we talked a little bit about Market to Market was coming up, I think, last time we talked, and then you did the Market to Market, then 2 weeks later you did Chicago Marathon. A week later, Chicago Marathon. And so that was actually this past week for Sunday. Us here as our podcast gets rolled out. So let's talk a little bit about Chicago this, in general first, not specifically your aspects of it, but in general, how was the setup and things like that?
Cool. I mean, it's just crazy. The Run Expo, went into the Run Expo Saturday evening, get your packet pickup and do all that stuff. And they have, every imaginable shoe vendor, running anything. I mean, it would be worth going in there because it's open to the public, so you didn't need to have anything to get in.
Oh, nice.
If you were looking for clothing, shoes, running equipment, anything that has to do with fitness, it was there. And it was all, 50% off, 60% off. It was just...
There's like a life hack right there. If you're looking for running gear, go find a race and just go to the expo.
Right. So the expo was awesome. And we got there. We originally were going to go up Friday night so we could be in Chicago and see everything that was going on Saturday, but it was homecoming for my son's football team. Right. And he's a senior, so we stuck around and went to the game Friday night, and then drove up Saturday. It was cool. It's a neat venue. It's the 40th anniversary of the Chicago Marathon, so that was a little special. The venue was neat. They start off down at Grant Park, right down there on the lake, and that everything was cool. It was neat seeing that many people. It was a beautiful morning.
Is this the largest marathon you've done? People-wise?
Well, it's one of the top 2 or 3.
Right. I was going to say, because there's...
60,000 participants.
Right.
12,000 volunteers, plus all the medical and emergency personnel that are there because of the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
That aren't volunteering. They're there because of their job.
Sure.
It was huge. I mean, there was probably, just in people involved in doing the race, there was probably, upwards of 80,000 people involved in the race, and then 1 million spectators.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And then you run through all the different little communities, run through the Korean neighborhood, the Puerto Rican neighborhood, and just every ethnic group neighborhood. Run up by Wrigley Field, run through what they call the Rainbow District, and run through there.
Nice.
So got to watch drag queens up on the stage,
hey, there you go,
singing and dancing and stuff, which was cool. So it
keeps your mind off the running.
Yeah. For about 5 steps.
Right.
So it was neat. But yeah, it was well orchestrated. Super.
Very cool.
Super.
I would imagine. I haven't done
organized.
anything that big yet, but I would imagine it takes tons of work to get something that organized. We know our buddy Angie, who's on the podcast, or was on the podcast, she follows us on Twitter and all that. She was a volunteer this year at the starting line, and she was posting some pictures and stuff. Yeah. It was so cool just to see from her experience, other than the whole having to get up at 4 a.m. thing.
Right.
But that's typical race day.
So
for
there
a lot
was
of people.
somebody else that I follow on Facebook, or we're Facebook friends, and she's a triathlete out in Colorado, and she was a volunteer at one of the aid stations. I was seeing people post social media afterwards.
Right.
And it was like, oh, cool. I wish I would have known beforehand, because you'd say hi.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was neat. So, hats off to all the volunteers. We talk about it. Go and volunteer for an event, because you can't have events without the volunteers.
Right. Absolutely. And volunteers got cool swag too.
Yep, it was.
So that's kind of neat.
Cooler than what we got for participants. I think.
Really? So talk about your race. How did it go? How did your run go? I remember you told me earlier you started in the very last wave.
Yep. So I was, they had you in corrals based on your expected times, and I guess I'm too honest, because I get stuck in the slowest corral.
Yeah.
Which right there led itself to some mental hurdles just off the start, because I'm like, I want to be up there and I'm back here. So we were the last group to start, and I think we got off. I think I crossed the starting line at 8:40.
Okay.
The first group off, Rupp and his
the elites,
they took off at 7:30.
Yeah.
So
you could tell everybody you just got beat by Rupp.
Right, yep. Well, if they wouldn't have spotted him in an hour and 10 minutes, I would have been right on his heels.
I mean, right there.
And it was crowded, so I just mentally was not in it at the beginning.
Sure.
I was texting some friends of ours that have run Chicago a couple times, and they're like, "Oh man, it sucks being in your spot." It's so physically beat you up, because you have to run between all these walkers and people who are and it was like that, and so I didn't run well. I didn't. I was just glad to finish, and I went in. Truthfully, I went in and I looked up, because I wasn't going to run any more full marathons.
Yeah.
I did my last half marathon. I landed in the ER, and my wife's like, "Yeah, this isn't worth doing."
Right.
And so I was going to run the Chicago, because my daughter asked me to for a charity thing. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. And I got beat up.
Yeah.
I just got beat up, and mentally. So my GPS watch and my phone were giving me pace and distance, and it wasn't jiving with the mile markers.
Oh, no.
And I didn't realize that till I got to mile 8. I didn't see any mile markers before then. So I got to mile 8. And right before we did a turn or something like that, and I'm listening to my phone, and my goal was run 4.5 ish. And long story short, I'm listening to my phone, and my phone says, "Okay, you're running a 10-minute pace or a 9:50 pace or whatever it was. You're at mile 12." And I turned the corner and I look up, and it was mile 8.
Oh,
so my phone and everything was 4 miles, 5 miles off of what my true. And I'm like, holy crap. Because I feel like I ran, we all know we've run enough long runs, training, how you feel.
Right.
You should be able to judge. Well, I felt like I was at mile 13, 14, body-wise, and I was at mile 8. So mentally, I just nosedived down from there. Started to get cramps, and then it became, when I got to the half, I still wasn't bad. Again, like I've said in this, I'm not fast, so a 5-hour marathon would not be unusual for me to run.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And so I finished the halfway point, and I think I was at 2:20 or something. I'm like, yeah, it's not what I want to be, but all right, I can get done. I can still hit 5 hours.
Still get 5 hours, yeah.
And I got there. And
remember, my 2 marathon times are 5:04:03 and 4:58 something.
Yeah, so I was like, man, I don't know if I can finish.
Yeah.
So then it became, once I admitted that to myself, there was a point, it was after the halfway point, and we're in there, and I'm like, you know what? If I was at home running, I'd quit right now.
Sure.
Because I'm that uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm in Chicago. I have no clue where I am.
Sure.
My wife doesn't know where I am. I can't quit.
Sure.
And so it was like, all right, start doing the whole run, walk stuff.
Yep.
Jog or run as long as I was comfortable. Once I started to cramp, walk a little, and I did that. So it was just brutal, that part. But didn't take away from the race. I would recommend doing Chicago to anybody who wants to experience a real marathon.
So it's considered a fast course.
Yep.
Did you feel that when you were running?
Oh, yeah.
And don't get me wrong.
Flat.
I mean,
it's flat as a pancake.
Flat.
There's a lot of corners in there because you're
Right.
running through neighborhoods. So I don't know if you're a really fast
Right.
runner, an elite runner.
If I remember correctly, I was watching the telecast, and they said it's not a course. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I heard it wrong. But it's not a course that would be considered a world record course.
Right.
Because of those hairpin
Right.
turns, it'd be really hard to do. Or maybe it was considered a world record course.
I don't know
or
if
something.
it is,
I don't
but
remember off the top of my head.
It's a tough. I would think for those guys, any place that you have to navigate 90-degree turns,
Right,
it slows you down.
So, weather-wise, how was it?
It got warm.
It got warm.
I mean, we were in the moderate heat warning
Yeah.
stuff. You know it's getting warm when they have, and I have never done Chicago, so maybe this is the norm, but to me it's saying, oh, it's warm out when they have the fire trucks out there with big, huge tornado fans blowing cold water out over the course because they're trying to keep people cooled off.
Sure.
Every time you ran through a neighborhood, there would be 2 or 3 people with their garden hoses out spraying runners down.
Yeah.
To me, that's saying
It's pretty warm.
Yeah. The hardest part was as I slowed down when you're starting in the last corral,
Right.
and you're struggling and you're getting slow. I never lacked for water or Gatorade when I needed it, but bananas and all that stuff was gone. So I struggled to find something to eat when I knew I didn't know I was getting dehydrated. I really thought I was doing a better job. So anyway, go back to I get to the finish.
Yep. So you finished.
Finished.
Yay!
Yeah,
Woo!
Right, and started to cramp up and end up in the EMT tent for about 2.5 hours while they were administering fluids and stuff so I could move. So I crashed and burned,
But you finished.
Yeah, right, absolutely. And it was the hardest thing I had to do to finish. I mean, it just, you couldn't quit because I was, like I said, where am I going to go?
Right.
And it was a struggle.
So I guess I want to talk a little bit about the mental side of it, because you had admitted, mental crash and burn. How did you said you ran, walked. Mm-hmm. So what were you thinking and how did you get over what you were thinking?
So I hurt. I mean, I just hurt from the tip of my toes up to in my hips and my lower back hurt. And what I didn't want to do, I didn't want to start. I could feel my calves cramp. So I didn't want to get to where I cramped up and couldn't run. I mean, I was seeing, at that point, I started to see people who, I thought I trained well enough to run.
Sure, yeah.
So I started seeing people I knew probably hadn't trained like they did start to fall off. And they're, leaning against the fence, stretching, doing all this stuff, and they were cramping up and hurting. And I'm like, I'm not going to run and get myself to a point where I can't finish.
Sure.
Because I think at that point I could easily I couldn't walk at the end because I was cramped up so bad. So I think I easily could have got that. So it was walk, pick a point out, walk to that point, and then I'm going to start to jog again and jog to whatever, pick a point down the distance. I'm going to go to the next mile marker. And I would do that as long as my legs felt comfortable. I was hurting no matter what.
Yeah.
But once I started to get crampy, I was like, all right, don't do that.
Yeah.
Walk some more and then run. And I really thought that I could go and walk out the pain part, and get uncomfortable and walk a little.
Stretch it out a little.
Yep. And then pick up pace and start jogging and be fine for a while. But I never got to that where I was comfortable to run again or even jog until the very end. I mean,
adrenaline kicks in.
Well, I just wasn't going to walk across the finish.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to mile 25 and said, all right, if you can't gut out 1.2 miles, you shouldn't be out here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fast by any means, but it was probably back down to close to 11-minute pace, which was goal. It was funny. So people who've run Chicago, they'll know this. So you finish and you get to a marker and you take a right-hand turn, and I think it says 440 meters to the finish, and it's uphill.
Oh, no.
The only uphill. And it's going across the railroad tracks right there by Grant Park. Okay. So it's the railroad bridge. And I'm like, I see everybody stopping and walking up there. And I'm like, God dang it, I'm not going to do that. So I'm running up, and I get to about the last 20 meters, and I got the worst dry heaves. I'm just reeling, I thought I was going to barf all over. So I was like, can't quite make it to the top of the hill. And then I ran down the ramp into the finish. But I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And
you picked up at least 20 places there.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you
absolutely.
Go. So to wrap up the talk about it, you did finish, and
I did.
But you did listen to your body. You slowed down.
Yeah.
And that's pretty important for people.
Right. Yeah. We've talked about Rob and his trip doing his ultra and ended up in the hospital and stuff. And I told my wife worries about me doing something stupid and hurting myself.
I worry about you doing stupid stuff.
Yeah. And so I made a promise to her I wouldn't hurt myself.
Sure.
And so, it's one of those. I also told her that this would be the last full marathon I run.
Until the next one.
Well, and she said, you can run more, but I'm not going to be involved with any of it. I don't want to be around to do it. And it was fun. I enjoy doing it, but man, when you're hurting, there's nothing worse than doing it and know you have 10 more miles to go, and you're like, I don't even want to do 10 more feet.
Yeah, I've been there,
and that's the way it was. Yeah. I mean, it was tough.
Obviously Chicago is one of the big ones. Yeah. If you're able to do it, go do it. If you're able to volunteer, go volunteer. For you East Enders, it's only a 3-hour drive or whatever.
Right.
So go over and volunteer if you get to.
It's a cool event.
I'm hoping personally, and I don't want to take away from your run or anything, I'm hoping personally to get back into shape here so I can do some big races like that. The whole baby thing. Man, we're 5.5 months, man.
Good for you.
I'm ready to start running. And now winter's coming.
Not till 2019, though.
That's true.
That's a
Game of Thrones.
Drop there.
So, but with that being said, congratulations on your run. It's your second full marathon?
Second full. Yep.
So, and now you're going to, no more marathons, so you're going to do a couple ultras, couple tries.
Yeah, right. I didn't say I wouldn't do an ultra. Right, I just said I will not do another full marathon. Right. So, no, it's like, all right, do halves because they're fun. And it's just unbelievable. The people who go out there and run multiple marathons in a year, the amount of dedication and time that you are willing to put into it is unreal, because there's no shortcut for running a marathon.
No, it's still.
Otherwise, you just suffer.
Exactly. All right. We'll take a break. We'll come back in just a moment right after this on episode 104 of the RunIowa podcast. All right, so I'm going to go into confession mode now, if that's all right. We're not going to do Up the Weeks this week. We will get back to that in our next podcast. So if you're looking for a race of the week or tip of the week, we'll get back to that in the next week.
Yes.
But I'm going to confess a little bit. My running did not start last week like I thought it might. Tennis ended last week for me.
Golf.
You're tennis.
Start play tennis.
You're tennis. I'm golf.
Yeah.
Okay. Golf ended last week. Yay, our season's done. And I'm saying yay because we had a good season. Excuse me. We had a good season, but I'm looking forward to next season because a lot of my kids are back. Anyway. I planned on working, but then, man, I got a cold. And, when you get a man cold, it's death.
I saw your post.
Right, yeah, and it's bad. And I know that is 100% a self-inflicted excuse. And it's like, oh, you could run. And I'm still, whatever. You can hear me right now and whatever. But I'm looking for motivation. I'm ready to get back out there, and I'm ready to go. And then, of course, this week, my sister-in-law is getting married. So that takes out most of this week for me getting to go for a run because it's just stuff leading up to her wedding. So what motivation tools, and I'm putting this out for everybody, but you can answer as well. What motivational tools do you use or do you know of that get somebody back into running if they've taken a hiatus? Now, sometimes our hiatus is because of injury. Sometimes it's because of a baby, life itself. But we're coming into the fall season for races, or we're in the fall season for races. The winter season is coming up upon us, and some people are just kind of getting ready for maybe training for something in the spring.
Right.
So what do you do to get into that mode? Let us know at RunIowa. But Dave, what do you got? Anything?
It's always in the past for me is to get into running back into doing something as having a race. But
sure.
After this weekend's events and stuff, I don't know what that will be. I think it's because one of our friends, Ryan's talking about maybe doing another spring marathon.
Right,
Marathon, because
yep.
he's run one and he wants to do another one. He thinks so. Him and himself, that's motivation,
Right?
Because he'll want somebody to run with,
Right. And he actually asked me, so
Right.
I'm considering it just for the sole purpose of making sure I have a goal.
Right. So that in itself is if I think the group accountability always is good about getting you back or having something to train for, even if it's not you.
Sure.
Training for with somebody for their event is just about as much fun as training for your own.
Yeah.
And I've come when you're spending 6 hours out on a course trying to gut it out.
Yeah.
You think of all these things
Sure.
like, geez, where did I go wrong in my training? What would I've done differently? How should I have done this? And you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to run a marathon because this sucks right now, but I'll help somebody train for it because
Right.
then they can learn from my failure.
Sure.
And I mean, I thought of all those things. So I think running with somebody who's training for something is good motivation in your own.
To get you back in
Yeah,
your own. Okay.
definitely.
I want to expand on that. That's a good piece you brought up. So what was the last thing you just said? And I'm losing my train of thought here, but you said training with somebody will help you, but I lost my train of thought.
Well, that training with somebody provides you with good motivation.
Your motivation.
To help them perform.
Do you recommend, and maybe, I don't know that you've used a coach.
I have not.
I have not used a coach either. I've seen people do, and we've talked to coaches and things like
Right.
that. If you've used a coach, why do you recommend it? And if you are a coach, why do you recommend it? What would help slubs like me get back out there?
No doubt.
I'm not looking to win anything,
Right.
but it would be nice
Yeah, you always want to run your best.
to run well. Yeah.
But I think you have to be humbled and honest with where you are in your running and just what you're capable of.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And that's a big part.
And how much time are you able to dedicate? There was a recent, was it an online article? I don't remember, about the teacher. She's like a fifth grade teacher or something. She gets up at 4 a.m. every day to get her runs in.
Right.
And then
and
she
you're
teaches.
not going to be doing that.
I'm not, because I
That's
stay up
not
late
you.
with the baby.
Right.
So
Well, even if you weren't staying up with the baby,
Right.
you've never
I'm not a
seen
morning
4
person.
4 a.m. in your life
There are
unless
two-
you
no,
were
no.
going to bed at that time.
there are two reasons I get up early. And this is, you can ask my wife. For whatever reason, the only reason I'll wake up early is to either...
Bodily functions don't count.
Nope, to go fishing or go golfing. Then I'll get up at 4 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't fished in 3 years.
And I've watched you play golf.
And you've watched me golf, so there's no reason for me to get up at
Right.
4 a.m. And so, it's mornings are tough, and race mornings are tough. I
Right.
remember, I haven't
Yep.
done a race in a while, but maybe that's it. Maybe that's what I need to do.
There you go.
Just get signed up. All right, that's going to be it for this episode of the podcast. If you want to go ahead and get a contact with us for any reason, use Twitter. That's our best way to get in contact, at RunIowa. You can also use our Facebook page, RunIowa, or Twitter, or, whoops, I said Twitter already.
Yep.
Instagram's on there now.
Yeah.
We're using that. And we talked about our super secret
Yeah.
last episode.
Yeah.
And it's not really a secret because
No.
I've been emailing a bunch of people,
Right.
but we're considering
Yep.
very seriously and plan on
Yep.
doing a RunIowa book.
Yes.
What did we learn over the past 3 years of doing
Right.
this podcast?
It's hard to believe it's been 3 years.
I know, right? So that's kind of nuts. So we've been contacting a few of you out there if you've been a guest of ours.
Right.
If we haven't, we are working on it. But yeah, we're gonna put together a book and just kind of some things that we've learned that we think are important or helpful for runners. And it doesn't have to be from Iowa, but that's just the name of our podcast.
Sounds cool.
Cool. So we'll keep you in the loop on that. Hopefully, that's our accountability right there.
Right.
We just put it on the podcast, and now I have to.
Right.
Maybe.
Yep.
Cool. That's it for this week. If you want to get in contact with us, you sure can. If you want to advertise with us, you can do that as
Absolutely.
well. Other than that, everybody,
Happy trails.